I'm Natalie Migliore, and as many New Yorkers may already know, officials have agreed to extend social distancing guidelines through April 30th. But what does that mean for survivors of domestic violence who may be spending more time at home with their perpetrators? Joining me today is Maureen Curtis. She's the Vice President of Criminal Justice Programs at Safe Horizons. Thanks for joining me, Maureen.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, Maureen, what is different about how survivors reach out for help during the coronavirus outbreak, and how can they reach out for help?
So, the major difference with how survivors can reach out to help is now many organizations, including Safe Horizon, are working remotely. Our hotline, though, which is 24 hours, 7 days a week, is still in operation, as are our shelters. They are still accepting survivors who need to leave their home, flee their home to go into shelter. But most other programs, and this is true of other provider agencies in the community, are operating remotely. And what that means is that we're not in our offices, so we're not seeing people if they come into court or if they come into a police precinct or if they just come into one of our community programs seeking assistance. But we are available by phone, and we're getting referrals directly from our hotline. We get referrals from our core partners. We get referrals from precincts because we have staff working in police precincts citywide, and from our website where people can seek information, and all of our numbers are up there with the information that we're now working remotely. Our staff are checking the messages throughout the day to, ensure that survivors who do call and leave a safe number for us to respond to, that we're calling them back quickly. So that's basically the main difference. And because of our long relationships with various systems, we have really strong partnerships, and they are making referrals to us of survivors who may be high risk. So somebody calling the police for assistance, it may not be an arrestable offense, but the person felt that their life was threatened, and that officer now is going to call us for us to do a follow-up call with that person.
And is that mostly how people are contacting you?
Mostly. I think we're, as I said, our hotline is still open 24 hours. So our hotline staff are answering the calls throughout the day and the night, and they have our information, so they know that if somebody is calling, for example, that is interested in seeking or petitioning for an order of protection, they send an email directly to the family court director of Safe Horizon in the borough that person would be seeking an order of protection. And our family court staff are skilled in how to help that person petition for the order of protection, even now that that's happening remotely. Similarly to, somebody who called the precinct. They may have called the police, and now they're called the hotline for assistance, and they're going to connect that survivor to the advocate who works in that police precinct so that they can, follow up with any additional assistance that may be needed by maybe the domestic violence police officer, and we'll be in contact with them.
Yeah, and so how can family members of survivors help?
So family members, I think that even before the coronavirus outbreak, we know that family is a critical what we call protective factor for survivors of domestic violence. So many survivors turn to their family and friends before they turn to any systems, including domestic violence providers. So how they can help, particularly now where survivors may be more isolated, is really, really important. So for example, as we've been told to stay at home and to social distance, we're also being encouraged to stay connected via Facebook or via phone calls, to touch base with family and friends. And that could be an opportunity for a family member who knows that their sister or their cousin is involved in a violent relationship, just to touch base with them and to see how they're doing. And it could be just a natural follow-up as part of the virus, as opposed to, checking in because of violence in the home. Similarly, the survivor who may not feel safe in calling 911 may call their family member and develop a code word with them. So it could be just for emotional safety, just to touch base, just to, have the support of a family member or a friend, or it could be that they feel that their life is being threatened. They're not able to call 911, but they're able to call a family member or a friend and use that code word so that family member or friend can call 911 on their behalf. But I think that we can't underestimate how important that support can be, whether it be to help that person when they're in physical danger, or even just to provide the emotional support around the trauma that that person may be experiencing, that might be heightened because they're now isolated in a home with somebody who's abusing them.
Right, exactly. Especially, like we were saying, they've extended those guidelines for social distancing, so people are being told to stay home. What is your advice to survivors who are home right now?
Well, I think that, one of the things that I would say is you're not alone. You're not alone. And even though many domestic violence advocates are working remotely, we're here to help. And the systems that have been the traditional systems that survivors turn to, whether it be going into a shelter, calling 911 when you feel your life is threatened, going into court to petition for an order of protection. All of these systems are still available. We're still accepting survivors and their children as needed into our shelters, as our other shelters. And a person can still call 911 if they feel their life is threatened. And if they want to petition for an order of protection, they can still come into the court. They don't come into the court now because it's all remote, but they can connect with one of our advocates or an attorney who can help them file and obtain that order of protection. So I think that, for those who don't want to avail themselves of these systems, we often talk to them, because even before the virus, we safety plan with some of our clients around the choice to stay in a relationship that may be abusive. Our survivors our clients day in and day out, make decisions about risks that they may identify that have more priority than the risk of physical danger. So we'll talk with them about, if they are choosing to stay, and this would apply now where they may be isolated in a home, how can you protect yourself if there is the threat of physical violence? The person who's being abused knows the person who's abusing them best. They know what triggers. They know that what may be upsetting to them, and they're going to manage that as they have in other situations, even more so now that they are isolated. Or it could be, as I mentioned, having a code word, whether it be with the children or a neighbor or a family member. But I think even more so now, safety planning with survivors, it's always individualized, but I think even more so now is probably thinking more outside the box, where people are going to be really creative and in how they protect themselves.
Great. Well, thank you, Maureen, so much for coming to talk to us today about, what survivors of domestic violence can do. Really helps, hopefully.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you.